Dear colleagues, I'm happy to welcome you today for the second day of the series of events with the Minister of Foreign Affairs of Russian Federation that is devoted to their situation around Brics. We are looking into Indian chairship this year, the results of the Russia's chairship last year, and today we are to explore in detail as much as possible potential areas for cooperation. So we've gathered a range of very well-known, very distinguished experts that have been in Brics for quite some time and that are ready to offer new paths, but also see where else we could be looking into even within areas that are already part of the Brics agenda. We will start with Mikhail Malkov, who is the head of the Brics office of the Foreign Policy Planning Department of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of the Russian Federation. We've done the introduction yesterday, but I do want to repeat that he, with the team, was the person who did a lot and his utmost to provide for the successful chairship of Russia last year, and it was a great pleasure to work with the Foreign Ministry, and I think we reached new heights exactly.
Thank you so much, and thank you for your kind words. I believe that new heights mean mostly new tasks that the future poses, and also I would like to welcome our colleagues from China, Brazil, South Africa, and India, of course. Good morning, good night for our Brazilian colleagues, and welcome. So, coming back to the theme of our round table, which is prospective partnership potential for the development of new areas of interaction in the Brics, I would like to recall that Brics is a relatively new format of multilateral cooperation, though it marks 15 years already this year. Saying this, I mean primarily the fact that our countries had never had experience of interaction within such pentalateral platform before Brics was created. Definitely we had maintained bilateral ties with a different history, but in such pentalateral format, it's quite a new stuff for us. But as a collective, we are still learning to build up a strong and substantive dialogue, and we still possess a lot of potential yet to be realized. Let me share with you some ideas on promising areas of Brics cooperation. Brics, in our opinion, can and must play an important role in building a new, more just and representative world order. In future, the Big Five could become one of the pillars of the renewed global architecture of multilateral cooperation. Particular attention should be paid to strengthening ties of our grouping with developing countries and their integration mechanisms. The expansion of the circle of external partnerships, primarily through the Brics Plus and outreach dialogue, is a testament to openness and willingness to share the benefits of collective work with others on a voluntary and mutually beneficial basis. Against the backdrop of the COVID-19 pandemic, an evident sphere that requires our close attention is healthcare. Back in 2015, UFA Brics Leaders Declaration mandated the Brics relevant authorities with the task to explore possibilities for close cooperation in the field of combating infectious diseases, including novel coronavirus diseases. They also called for paying due attention to the importance of increasing resistance to antimicrobial drugs, which poses a risk for health and complicates efficient treatment. In Johannesburg, our leaders supported the South African initiative to establish a Brics Vaccine Development and Research Center. And we hope this project will be implemented in the nearest future. Our South African partners, as a lead nation in this endeavor, display their readiness to double efforts on operationalization of the center. So we strongly support these efforts. We are strongly committed to fulfill the instructions by our leaders, and the current situation reflects the need in such efforts. With this scope, the Russian Brics Chairmanship in 2020 launched the initiative to establish an integrated early warning system for preventing mass infectious diseases risks, aimed at strengthening our collective capabilities to effectively respond to future challenges in this sphere, such as COVID-19. We also look forward to finalizing a draft MOU between the regulatory bodies of the Brics countries in the field of regulation of medical products for human use in order to reach its early signing. We also launched a new format of our cooperation, which is meetings of Brics heads of services responsible for ensuring sanitary and epidemiological well-being. In December, we managed to host the first meeting in such format, and it proved the need to further continue cooperation in this field. With regard to the current situation and increase in risks of emerging of new biological threats, we cherish the hope to gain support of our fellow Brics partners to launch an expert dialogue on biosecurity issues. It could contribute to crystallizing a common approach to the issue of biosecurity, which we could collectively promote within relevant international fora. We also highly appreciate the Indian chair for prioritizing issues of digital medicine in Brics. Given the latest impressive progress in digital technologies, we should ensure that the innovations serve the task to make our people's life better, including through introducing innovative solutions in treatment and diagnostic practices. Undoubtedly, the healthcare issues have a close link to the sustainable development aimed at increasing well-being, ensuring well-being and increasing life standards of our citizens. We support the intention of the Indian chair to have a close look to using digital and technical tools to achieve SDGs. While chairing the grouping, Russia proposed the initiative to establish an ad hoc working group on sustainable development in the post-COVID-19 period with cross-sectoral mandate. We believe it could help us to define a common strategy in combating the negative effect of the COVID-19 pandemic for our economy and healthcare systems. Cooperation on development assistance is also a promising area for pentalateral discussions. In 2020, we plan to host Brics meeting on development cooperation. Unfortunately, the pandemic broke our schedule and we didn't manage to hold this event. However, we are optimists and look forward in coming back to this issue when possible, as we rest assured that Brics has something to say here. Definitely one of the promising area for our cooperation is a financial track. 5 countries have created valuable mechanisms such as New Development Bank and contingent reserve arrangements. CRA is designed to serve a safety cushion for Brics countries in case of turbulence on their financial markets and lack of liquidity. Several CRA test runs have been held successfully for the past years. However, a lot yet to be done in order to make this instrument efficient and effective. We consider as a promising continuation of Brics dialogue on integration of payment system of our countries, which could be helpful for trade operations. We strongly support the increase in use of national currencies in trade payments between our countries. We also advocate for financing NDB projects in Brics countries in currencies of our Brics countries, as it could contribute to reduction of costs and decrease in dependence on foreign currencies, primarily the US dollar. While chairing Brics, Russia paid a serious attention to this issue. Russia has consistently advocated enhancing Brics interaction on peacekeeping issues. The 5 countries are actively involved in defining the key directions for the development of UN peacekeeping, including within the framework of the UN General Assembly Special Committee on Peacekeeping, so-called C34 Committee. What is more, there are the major contributors to contingents of the UN peacekeeping operations. Life itself urges us to pay special attention to ensuring international information security, countering cyber threats. We have got direct instructions from our leaders in this regard, which is to prepare and to implement the Brics roadmap on practical cooperation on ensuring security in the use of ICTs. It would include concrete steps to promote common positions on international platforms, primarily at the UN, measures to develop the base of bilateral agreements and pentalateral agreements. It would also be useful to organize an exchange of experience on practical developments in the field of ICTs. Every suggestion will help us reach new joint agreements in the future. We need to explore common challenges and opportunities for strengthening Brics cooperation in the field of countering corruption. Organizing an expert roundtable on anti-corruption education and training was very good experience, and it needs to get further continuation. Actually, corruption presents a challenge for development of developing countries and sustainable development in general, but not only in developing countries, but also in developed ones as well. And through raising public awareness, anti-corruption education, and training for anti-corruption practitioners and officials make an important step towards eradicating this burden and contributing to the sustainable development. One of the promising areas for our cooperation is the cooperation on space issues. The heads of the relevant line agencies of the 5 countries meet on a regular basis, but definitely the dialogue should be strengthened as well. As we are working on the agreement on cooperation on Brics remote sensing satellite constellation, and we hope that this work will be finalized under the Indian chairship. We also discussed another idea, which is to create an international scientific educational space system, a research international space cluster, through small-sized satellites to study natural climatic phenomena. We believe it is very promising to further deepen the dialogue in this sphere. As we are talking about the Brics cooperation on some issues pertaining, we proceed from the understanding that the environmental issues require our attention as well. Within the dialogue between our relevant ministries, we already created in 2019 the best platform. This is Brics platform of environmentally sound technologies. We believe that within this platform we could discuss the issues of water pollution, the issues of plastic waste, which is very topical issue for our countries, and we believe that this dialogue should be continued as well. Given the fact that under the Russian chairship in 2020, the anti-counterterrorism strategy was adopted, we believe it's very important to continue the dialogue on counterterrorism within Brics. Definitely it requires a very balanced approach, but at the same time we know that terrorism and terrorists don't know the frontiers, and this is the threat for not only the Brics countries but for the whole international community, and definitely we should strengthen the ties between the relevant authorities, relevant special services, and between our ministries of foreign affairs to make this cooperation more effective and efficient. I should mention in this regard, in this context, the initiative of the international database on terrorists that was set up by our federal service, Federal Security Service, and we know that this project enjoys the support by our Brics friends, as all the Brics countries participate in this project and positively contribute to its further development. So I've just mentioned a few ideas for the Brics cooperation and prospects of deepening our dialogue, but I'm sure that there are a lot of areas for our cooperation, and I welcome experts presenting here to highlight some new ideas for our cooperation for us as practitioners and officials who are dealing with Brics. It's very important because a lot of ideas have been taken from the expert track, and I believe Ms. Panova never forget to recall this issue as well. So thank you so much, and I return the floor to Ms. Panova. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Malkov. Really a comprehensive overview of all the issues that BRICS have been either already going into in depth or some prospective areas that are already taken by the BRICS official track, but probably up till now not really insufficiently. And you rightly say that I never forget to remember that a lot of ideas did come from the expert track, and it was Indian that chairship that we initially started expert discussions of their new development bank issues. It was Russia where the network university idea was born initially, etc., etc. We can continue with this. We started our BRICS Think Tank Council exercises, or BTTC exercises, after it was established back in Durban in 2013, with the vision where each of the 5 countries, but collectively taking charge of one of their pillars, would elaborate on where the BRICS is going. And I think a lot of it has been already undertaken, but there are some issues that either proved probably needing slightly different focus, or maybe now, after living through all their issues, we see that we need some other areas to include. I'll remember once again their strategy for economic partnership that was the new version that was adopted till 2025. Definitely, as we see from the overview of the progress of this partnership till 2020, quite a lot have been achieved, but still not enough, and we still hear, especially from the outside experts, that there is practically China that is having cooperation with the other BRICS countries and is within the top 3 in economic exchange with that. But many people disregard that, of course, the dynamics within the BRICS, intra-BRICS dynamics, have been much more intensive than BRICS and the rest of the world. But that also means that we need to do more in order for their next partnership to show even better results, where we don't have to find those, those different percentage of growth of the dynamics between the BRICS and the rest of the world to see that BRICS is doing good, but for it to demonstrate that it is actually economics, financial track, investment track, are working and are showing results in that BRICS countries are remaining, all of them, at the forefront of the global economic development. I think this is the ambitious goal that we're looking into. We're also looking into the situation, and I would be asking Ivan to probably elaborate more on the economic and financial track as much as possible. We're looking into the situation when we can expect a new development bank to be their fashion setter in the area of infrastructure investments, but also beyond, because there are many, of course, infrastructure remains to be the weak spot, even not just for our countries, but globally we are like 8 trillion now deficit in terms of how much investment is needed into infrastructure. But NDBs for now, of course, is contributing a lot for their institution that's just been set up, but I think there are much wider areas for cooperation, and I do expect, and I'm sure all our partners do expect, that it would be showing even more visible results, especially after we have set up offices in each of the 5 countries. And as we learned how to react to crisis, when you mentioned yesterday that already not 4, but already 7 billion US dollars have been distributed in order to fight the pandemic. So it's the way, and I think not a single other financial institution managed to do something like that. And to attend to the needs of its shareholders. So I think this is a very good example. We also know that value chains were seriously compromised as a result of COVID-19 and in the whole of economic development. And there's also a potential for Brics to look into this area and to do more than we are already doing. That said, I would ask Ivan Oliveira, who is a longtime friend of ours. He's also not just the Director for International Studies, Political and Economic Relations of the Institute for Applied Economic Research, IPEA, but he's also heading Brazilian Brazilian delegation, Brazilian coordinating body for the BTTC, and we've done a lot of good things together for Brics development. Ivan, the floor is yours.
Thanks, Victoria. It's good all again. Hello, everyone. Good evening and good morning and maybe night. Maybe, well, that's part of the Brics agenda. But anyway, after a long day here, dealing with many things, it's a pleasure to be with you here, talking about Brics and giving some food for thought on a couple of issues on which, in fact, we've been working together. But also at IPEA, we've been developing some new projects, for example, especially on energy, on which I think have a lot to do within the Brics. I'll talk about that later. But let me just, I'm gonna bring some issues here on which I think we have a lot to do, and maybe have my take on how I see the Brics collaborating, what's the role of the Brics, and how difficult or not that difficult it would be to go deeper in our cooperation in those specific issues. Obviously, one of the things that is right there as part of the issues that we should discuss in this panel has to do with global politics, and that's a very important one for the Brics, I think. The world will probably shake a little bit more the next couple of years. There are very structural and important changes coming on, and obviously the Brics are pretty much involved there, especially I'd say China and Russia, but also India, Brazil, and South Africa to some extent. The way the United States, especially with Biden's leadership, is going to try to rethink and reposition itself in many global stages is going to be very important. And that's why one of the things, I think, one of the issues that is especially, that's also a very special issue that the Indian presidency has brought to the academic forum agenda with very strongly, I'd say, that is environmental issues. That's probably more environmental climate issues. That's, I'd say, a new, maybe not so new, but a front on which we're going to see US, China, and some other countries dealing and pushing in different ways. And definitely there, I think we must find common ground for the Brics in order to have their say, and especially having joint statements and positions in order to help save multilateralism, peace, understanding in a world order that is plural, not for just one hegemon. So obviously, when it comes to geopolitical issues, many other problems comes in our way. We have China, India issues, have China-Russia issues. Brazil is not that much of a big player in that field, but we also have especially our regional issues that are very important. But I think it's essential that in the coming future, I'd say, we do put global politics and global issues in our agenda more and more. Obviously, it has been always there somehow. In our leaders' statements, we can find it there. But I'd say we live in a moment right now that is critical to bring back that agenda and try to foster common understanding in the way the world order is going to be indefinitely. Again, the Brics has a lot to say here. Coming to a second point that has to do with economic issues, I think the COVID-19 pandemic has brought us many and fast changes that were there. They would happen somehow, but obviously due to the pandemic, they just happened maybe a lot quicker than what we thought they would come. Where I'm for almost 1 year at home, working from home. All my institute is working in telework right now. In fact, the productivity went up. That's a good thing of this last year. We have at IPEA. But this digital economy agenda is also critical, I'd say. And again, the Indian presidency of the Brics brought it to attention, especially in the academic forum agenda. The changes are fast, and we need to move quite fast. Again, we're quite different animals in that agenda too. Again, Brazil is not that much ahead, but we have China and India and some other countries. Brazil, maybe in some specific subsectors, also having a say. But definitely that's an agenda we need to work together. And that has also to do with some important issues to geopolitical and global politics issues regarding security issues. And Mr. Malkov mentioned the cybersecurity agenda that is quite close and connected to the digital economy one. And in that case, I think a comprehensive and well-connected agenda that brings economics and security issues together is essential to deal with digital economy problems that we're going to face. We have the 5G agenda that is very strong right now in Brazil. We're probably going to have our 5G system network being implemented next year. There's a lot being discussed on that, and China especially is an important player in that field. Again, here I think it's essential to find ways where we can manage some of the advantages our countries may have in building and trust and in business connections in this global digital economy, and making our economies get closer. We're getting together. It's much easier, I'd say, in this new world. Definitely, so technology is very important, and technology is very important not only for the digital thing alone. Technology is very important for many other sectors, and Victoria mentioned infrastructure, for example. And when one thinks of infrastructure, I'd say we have physical one, but we have, for example, energy. That is a very critical point, an infrastructure issue for any country. And in the case of Brazil, I've been doing some research at IPEA, especially getting closer look on what are the possibilities of Brics cooperation on energy, for example. And there are plenty of them. Just 2 weeks ago, we had a seminar together with the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and the Ministry of Energy, presenting this paper. And it is impressive how opportunities are there. Obviously, when we go to sector-specific issues, maybe it's a lot easier to go to bilateral relations. So Brazil, Russia, Brazil, China, Brazil, India, and South Africa. But again, here I think we need to go deeper and understand that we need to have this multi-track or maybe two-track approach towards the BRICS. We need to foster bilateral relations wherever possible. So if hydrogen may be a good source of energy on which Brazil and Russia can work together. So if we foster that, and we foster with China something else, with solar power, for example, with India something else, getting closer and making our economies more together in order to deal with the crisis that we're living due to the pandemics is very important. And in the energy sector, I think there are many possibilities. Brazil right now is with a new energy plan. And for example, nuclear is very important in that plan, and not in building great nuclear power stations, but smaller ones, for example. And there we have at least China and Russia as very important partners, which would join in new projects. We have minerals and many other that are collateral to the energy sector on which we could work together. But again, if that's not the case of finding common ground for a pentalateral approach, I think we need to put a lot more effort in our bilateral approach, because I think at the end of the day, if Brazil is much closer to China, to India and South Africa, different sets of issues, we're going to find it's going to be much easier to find common ground for a BRICS approach towards something, especially if it has to do with global or any kind of regime or rules on which we should work together in the international arena in order to have our interests well taken in different issues. So that's one thing I think we need to stress a lot more. That is, bilateral should also lead somehow to the pentalateral agenda. The pentalateral always been a little bit harder to do, but we've been doing a lot. And Malkov also mentioned many things. And the Russian presidency was a very rich one. If we take energy, for example, we could develop a lot in. From the Brazilian perspective, even the policymakers are quite well impressed by what the BRICS could deliver and how fast we have been moving on, for example, on energy cooperation. But again, we need to go also a lot faster on technology issues, on scientific issues. Health, obviously is another issue that is critical. The pandemic is right there. And again, the Vaccine Research Center is a very good example of what we can do, but we need to implement it and see it alive. Maybe to the next pandemic, we could do something together. And in health, given the centrality of the issue since last year, is one of those issues where we can also see how technology can be important. So this track that has to do with technology cooperation has spillover effects in many other sectors. And obviously, if we could, for example, prioritize health and go deeper in what we could do together, having technology as a driver. Energy, again, technology is central for energy cooperation and for energy production. So technology cooperation for energy in the BRICS would be essential in my view to fostering the economic agenda in the group. And Victoria mentioned it, and I think, and I stay right here and I finish right here, the agenda of financing. So the NDB has played and has been playing a very important role in the last couple of years. In this last 2 years, a very important role in the pandemic, but there's a lot more to be done. I think we're just starting, and I see possibilities again when it comes to financing that are critical, and financing could go obviously covers all the previous issues I've mentioned: health, technology, energy, digital economy, and so on. But it could also, and as the NDB has showed during the pandemic crisis, that the NDB should be also a driver for social policies in order to deal with crisis context in our country. So social issues are also, and we've been dealing with that for some time now. I do remember that in the BTC agenda, we have a couple of papers we have produced on cooperation on social policies. That's very, very interesting. And I think there's a lot to be done, and there's a lot we could share in how our countries have been able or not to deal with the pandemic, and what were the good ideas that were implemented and the bad ones, or the ideas that could not get implemented. But social issues together with this structural sustainable development agenda that the NDB is right there to try to solve are very important, and I'd say should be one of the key elements that the NDB in its current presidency should do in order to be even bigger and every day bigger and bigger, in order to fulfill all the potential that I think that we do see in the Brics economic agenda. Financing is critical. There are many gaps in Brazil, and this one is very important. I think also the NDB should be the driver in order to rethink the way some countries deal with internal issues like governance of external financing, for example. That's a hurdle in Brazil somehow. It's just too bureaucratical the way Brazil deals with external financing and how it gets approved within. So pushing also new ideas, maybe using the research department of the bank on how to create sound and good governance on how to deal with external financing issues would be an interesting thing to see. So also mobilizing resources in order to make the money flow in a good speed that is critical also to deliver what we need out of the bank. Not to say trade, investment, and in many other issues. We've been dealing with that. In fact, this year at IPEA, we're trying to focus on some bilateral economic relations and going deeper to understand the problems and present some solutions or some ideas to solve those problems in bilateral agendas. We're going to start a cycle of seminars, starting with the Brics. So India is going to be our first partner in April. We're gonna have our very first seminar on Brazil-India economic relations, together with the Indian embassy here in Brasilia, probably with the Indian finance minister opening it. So getting closer to India, understanding India, what is the potential between our economies. And that's the same thing we're going to do with Russia, and then with South Africa and China and some other countries that we have selected to go in the second semester. We need to get closer together. We need to get to know our countries, our economies, and the potential that we do have a lot better. We've been doing a lot, and I think it is great to see what we have achieved in the last, let's say, 10, 12 years at least, that I've been following Brics issues from Brazil. But there's a lot more to be done, and the moment to do so is right here, right now. So somehow prioritizing some issues is critical to deliver. And I think we could see that in the previous Brics presidencies, and we're going to see that right now during the Indian presidency. And we continue to be quite supportive and interested in trying to help understand our countries and try to bring new ideas to the BRICS table. So continue to count on us. Anyway, hopefully some of the issues I've taken here will be fruitful for our discussions. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Ivan. Indeed, it was really good to look into all the areas that we've already achieved, and that is true. You've mentioned the new technologies and ICT, and this was part of the very important agenda during the Brazilian chairship. We should remember that it was back in 2019 that we saw the launch of the new STI architecture, and you're indeed very right about necessity for pentalateral cooperation in BRICS for cyber issues, for providing for information security, because this is really truly coming on there more and more on the top of the agenda. We are seeing it with every single day and with every single new issue. Thus, it is not enough to just work on bilateral level. We need to have a common position, and together 5 countries could make a change and could promote and foster those issues within other areas like ITU or United Nations as a whole, etc. So there are a number of platforms that already exist, and if BRICS can come up as an entity in cyber, this could be, in fact, really helping a lot. You also said that, I think another very important idea, among many others, that now we are experiencing extremely fast change, and we have to adapt, but not just adapt. This is not enough. So BRICS should not be remaining or being reactive. We have to be forward-looking, and we have to act, all 5 of us, together ahead of everybody else. We have to set the agenda. This is, I think, one of the most important issues we have to, as BTTC, in fact, putting forward. We have to not only urge our leaders, our officials, to be forward-looking and to act before the others. We have to work together, BTTC and official track, within 1.5 track, in order to ensure that we are in constant exchange of those ideas. And I think you've presented a set of very important issues, including in energy. We've just also discussed recently that last year we had their energy outlook presented during the Russia's chairship, and it offered the consolidated view of all the 5 BRICS countries and the prospects for energy developments, and thus we could be looking into how we use hydrogen or atomic energy or other alternative sources of energy for environmentally friendly development and for economically sustainable development of our countries. Thanks once again. That said, I'm now passing the floor to Ambassador Vishwanathan, who is Distinguished Fellow of the Observer Research Foundation. He is also our very long-time friend, and he's also heading their Indian segment and Indian institution delegation for BTTC. And we've heard a lot of new ideas from Vish, and I think it's always an extreme pleasure to work with you, and I'm hoping for many more years to work within BRICS and not only. Vish, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Victoria. Am I audible?
Yes, we can hear you well.
Thank you, Victoria. Thank you very much for inviting me for this very important roundtable. And I think it's a great initiative. Let me congratulate you and your colleagues at the Far Eastern Federal University for taking this timely initiative to have an exchange of ideas right in the beginning of Indian presidency. And as always, events organized by you are very productive and very inspiring. And personally, I learn a lot from such interactions. Let me also congratulate Russia on a very successful Brics presidency in 2020. And that was under very trying circumstances with the pandemic. But on the academic side, you managed it so well, and you took the academic activities to much higher levels. In yesterday's session, my ORF colleague Akshay Mathur had given a detailed account of the Indian priorities for the chair in 2021. And more importantly, he also gave the list of events, the calendar of events on the academic side. So I won't go into all that and come straight to today's theme, which is prospective partnership, that is potential for development of new areas of interaction in the BRICS. Mr. Mikhail Malkov gave a very good tour d'horizon of all the cooperation that BRICS has done in the last 15 years. And also, he gave ideas about some of the new areas. And that was followed up by our friend Ivan, who also gave some new ideas and had a very comprehensive presentation. So because of shortage of time, I won't go into all the areas, but I'll choose some 4 or 5 areas which in my view are very important for prioritizing our cooperation. Now, before I do that, I have to put the whole thing in context. That is, there are 2 aspects to this. One is the evolution of BRICS has been based on gradual progress and incrementalism. So there has always been continuity and a kind of seamless transition from one chairmanship to the other. That is why BRICS has been very successful in its intra-BRICS cooperation. Keeping this in mind, the theme that India has chosen for BRICS 2021 is cooperation for continuity, consolidation, and consensus. So this aspect of continuity is very important. And the new areas which we will be approaching will be in the sense of continuity. The second thing to be looked at in the context is we had the initial objectives of the BRICS were intra-BRICS cooperation, reform of international financial institutions like World Bank and the IMF, and a greater role in global governance. Now, over the years, we have crystallized these 3 broad things into 3 pillars, and we have been working on the 3 pillars, irrespective of which country is the chairman. One is global politics, the second is economy, and the third is people-to-people cooperation. Now, under these 3 broad themes, India hopes to bring some new ideas in some areas, and I won't go into all of them, but I'll choose 4 or 5, as I said, which I think are very important. The first is what we call reformed multilateralism. Mr. Malkov spoke about more representative global order. Ivan also touched on that, about the global order and how it has to be modified. The ineffectiveness of the current version of multilateralism is there for everybody to see, because today's multilateralism doesn't reflect the geopolitical and geo-economic realities of the world. There has been a lament also on the kind of decline of multilateralism in the world. Now, in a post-COVID-19 world, in a hurry to revive multilateralism, we should not revert to the old version. That is what India is saying. What the world needs is a new vision and a new multilateralism, what we can call multilateralism 2.0, which will be genuinely democratic, which will be genuinely inclusive, and which will be genuinely reflective of the current geopolitical and geo-economic realities of the world. Now, the time is ideal. When we are trying to revive multilateralism, this is the time to bring in a new version of it. And in my view, there is no grouping in the world other than Brics, which is ideally suited to take leadership in this great endeavor. The second important aspect I would like to touch on is digitalization, which has already been referred to by Ivan. This is not exactly a new area, but what Brics can do is to make this process beneficial for the poor and the economically vulnerable. Already the 5 countries are doing a lot in this field. India, for example, has created a revolution of sorts by using digitalization for direct transfer of cash benefits to the poor people. Digital technology is also being used in the field of health and provision of public goods. What Brics can do is to come up with new innovations to make digital economy the new tool of development. Digital economy is certainly not for the elite and the upper echelons of the society. It is actually a tool to reform and the developing societies. Brics can design a global framework for digital public goods, digital governance, and digitalization for the SDGs. Digitalization and innovative ways of using it are critical for empowering the bottom of the pyramid. The third area that has been discussed off and on in Brics, but we have not taken any concrete step together as the 5 countries, is the problem of unequal growth. All the 5 countries face this problem. There is what is called the Gini coefficient, and everybody knows about it. The pandemic has only made the problem of unequal growth worse. Can Brics come up with a new paradigm of growth which will reduce the gap between the rich and the poor in the Brics countries? And this paradigm can later be used by other developing countries. Connected with this question of unequal growth is the problem of the informal sector. Now, this is the biggest chunk of the economy in 4 of the 5 Brics countries. Probably Russia may be an exception. We cannot change the informal sector to a formal one overnight. It will create a lot of disruptions and a loss of livelihoods. There has to be a way to make the informal sector more efficient and more productive. And since Brics countries are facing this problem, they can create a template which may also be useful to the other developing countries. Now, there are other areas also, new areas, where Brics can work together and bring in new ideas to help not only the 5 countries, but other developing countries. The first among them is cooperation in the World Trade Organization. With a new head of the World Trade Organization from the developing world, Dr. Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala from Nigeria, who is very receptive to the ideas of the developing world, I think we can push a lot of things which may be beneficial not only to Brics but developing countries. Incidentally, I have had the honor and privilege of interacting with Okonjo-Iweala when I was the ambassador to Nigeria. She was a Nigerian foreign minister and Nigerian finance minister, and I have had the pleasure and privilege of meeting her. Now, one area of cooperation in the WTO has already started. There is a new initiative by India and South Africa, which is now supported by 57 members of the World Trade Organization. And this is to have a TRIPS waiver, that is a trade-related intellectual property rights issues. The TRIPS waiver by WTO on COVID-19 vaccine production. This is an initiative which is for the benefit of whole of humanity. And this will benefit the whole global community for uninterrupted supply of vaccines. We have to find a balance between profits for the big pharma industries. Naturally, they will work on profits because they are private industries. That is understood. But there has to be a balance between the profits for the pharma industries and the global good, not for one country or two countries, but for the whole of humanity. So this is a great initiative, and I suppose Brics will push this in the WTO. The second will be to form new rules for consumer protection in e-commerce. All the 5 BRICS countries are big markets for e-commerce. And our populations, our people are benefiting from e-commerce in a big way. But there is a need for new rules that consumers' interests are protected in this competition in the e-commerce. And the last point I would like to make is, which is becoming more important and BRICS has started taking a lot of interest, it is in the field of traditional knowledge. There should be recognition of the traditional knowledge and also financial compensation for the use of traditional knowledge, whether it's in the field of agriculture, whether it's in the field of health, or even in other fields. And this traditional knowledge should include also the protection of genetic resources of all the countries, particularly the developing countries. I think I'll stop here and wait for our Q&A session where we can have a good interaction. Thank you, Victoria, once again for this great initiative.
Thank you, Vish. It was really good to listen to you and to, in fact, we're really looking forward to, first of all, April, where we can discuss all those issues for BTTC and how we can put forward a number of areas that you've mentioned. But it is also important to see the input from a wider expert community. That's what we're having today, and that is why I would like to give the floor now to Dr. Imani Pant, who is Associate Fellow of Vivekananda International Foundation, another very reputed, well-known think tank in India, who will be able to give her view on the ideas that we've been discussing sometimes for quite some time. Some of them are fresh new, and offer your vision for BRICS cooperation and for India's role in it. So, Dr. Pant, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Chair. Hello, everyone, and good morning from Delhi. I'm representing VIF, as Victoria just said, and on behalf of the VIF, I'd like to congratulate the Far Eastern Federal University for organizing this timely discussion. Also, I also want to thank everyone for giving me this opportunity. Since much has already been said, a comprehensive, rich view has already been done. So I'm going to restrict my remarks to BRICS cooperation on healthcare. Since India's BRICS chairship comes amid the global efforts towards post-pandemic recovery, as the global efforts towards post-pandemic recovery are taking place. As you're aware and has already been pointed out, India has already laid out its priorities under the theme BRICS at the rate 15 intra-BRICS cooperation. The cooperation for the priorities in which include, the reform of multilateral system, counterterrorism cooperation, technological and digital solutions for sustainable development goals, and enhancing people-to-people cooperation. This theme reflects India's approach to strengthen the founding principles of BRICS cooperation based on continuity, consolidation, and consensus. So, therefore, as chair, India will work on specific deliverables across 3 pillars of intra-BRICS cooperation, which is political and security, economic and financial, and culture and people-to-people contact. Now, in the pillar economic and financial, I will restrict my remarks to digital health and traditional medicine, which find a mention in the priorities, in the subheadings laid out by India. Digital health and traditional medicine is very important at this time as we are looking for recovery, as I just said earlier. And new reality requires newer approaches. India is of the firm opinion that COVID-19 vaccines are a global public good that will directly contribute to the economic revival of the world. This revival is particularly important within the context of Brics, as they account for over 3.6 billion people and have a combined GDP of $16 trillion. So, at a time when many countries in the West have resorted to vaccine hoarding India has, in fact, sent several millions of doses in its immediate neighborhood as well as far-off regions, which includes Brazil and South Africa under its vaccine Maitri or the vaccine friendship campaign. This includes Indian-made Covishield vaccines manufactured under license from Oxford AstraZeneca, as well as the indigenously produced Bharat Biotech vaccine, which is COVAX. So I'm also very happy to note in this context the progress in the collaboration with Russia, which is Sputnik V. The first samples of COVID-19 vaccines produced in India are already being tested by the Russian Direct Investment Fund. And India may soon be producing as many as 300 million doses of Russian vaccine. So such a collaboration will go a long way, within all the members of the BRICS in taking the relations forward. And India remains committed to affordable and accessible vaccines to everyone. A great deal of is possible under the aegis of BRICS. The call for joint effort by the BRICS countries was also made by, a Russian president in the 2020 summit. So, given the focus on digital health and traditional medicine, there is a great potential to, in fact, go beyond COVID-19 in the coming years. The countries could focus on healthcare in general, as well as conduct joint research on prevention of future pandemics, which would assist in the prevention of future pandemics. So this is basically an extension of the points made earlier. I think joint research on overall health would be a very important development in taking BRICS cooperation forward. I guess that is it. And on my closing note, I would also like to mention that, VIF looks forward to collaboration with your university and other institutions in future. And we're keeping a tab on all the developments that are taking place. And we really appreciate this timely discussion that you are conducting, and we look forward to further such interactions. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Pant. Indeed, I think every speaker have raised the importance of health issues, and our 5 countries have made a contribution to global health agenda. Mr. Malkov remembered their opening speech of their UFA declaration when BRICS were the first to, in fact, stress the importance of the issue, and then we saw the COVID-19 pandemic coming on. We remember their 2018 decision of formation of their vaccine development center. We are hoping this does deserve a portion of criticism on the part of expert community, because this has been too slow to start. So we had this idea and the decision already 3 years ago, and the pandemic came and we were still in there, not yet in the delivery process of this center. So this is important. This also showcases the importance of delivering on the promises or on the commitments and decisions made by the BRICS leaders for us. And indeed, each of the countries have their expertise, and India is putting forward as one of its areas, of course, health, and we would be happy to discuss this and join our efforts together. So thanks once again. And now I'm happy to pass the floor to our other very important, valuable partner, Dr. Jing Xin, Secretary General of the China Council for the BRICS Think Tank Cooperation, while Dr. Jing Xin is rather newly appointed. The BTTC has been our partner, and we always had a very pleasant memories and experience of working out joint ideas, working on the documents, and looking for a way forward, both for both countries, but also for BRICS to foster the ideas and to foster their development. Dr. Jing Xin, the floor is yours. We're looking forward to your ideas in this regard.
Thank you, Dr. Victoria. 特别高兴今天有机会参加有俄方倡导的这个研讨会。
It's a great pleasure for me to attend this seminar conducted by the Russian side.
也很遗憾这个昨天没有参加第一场讨论我也知道我很明显我错过了很多有用的信息，因为今天上午我刚刚听了几位发言人讲得非常好很受启发。
And it's a pity that I failed to participate in yesterday's discussion. Apparently, the discussion yesterday contained lots of useful information, which has been proved by the discussion we've had just now.
作为中方的金砖国家智库理事会的这个负责人我是第二次参加咱们的会议上次是有南非学者他倡导的会议开的也很成功。
As the superintendent of the CPTC on the China side, it's my second time to participate in the meeting concerning BRICS. Last time, the first time I attended such conference, that conference was hosted by the South African side, which was also a great success.
无论是谁倡导的我也看得出我们金砖国家的智库理事会我们5国的智库学者们都在从不同角度来为今年印度成功举办这次会议来献计献策。我相信在我们的共同努力之下今年的印度主席国的这个金砖国家的这个峰会一定会开得很成功。
No matter which country was the host of such discussions, I have noticed that both the CBTC and experts from the BRICS countries are actively contributing new ideas for India in its presidency of this year. It's my firm belief that under the joint efforts of all sides, the presidency of India this year will be a success.
今年印度的峰会的主题我觉得非常好是叫金砖15周年继往开来新闻资源志同道合的金砖合作。我觉得这个主题非常贴合当下的实际。
I highly commend the theme of the summit of India this year. I think this theme is highly relevant in consideration of the current circumstances in the world.
金砖国家之所以这个我们从已经友好合作有成效的合作15周年主要是基于志同道合这几个关键词。
The reason why the BRICS partnership have lasted for 15 years is mainly because the cooperation and work has been based on the same will and or we say comradeship.
15年是一个值得总结、回顾和展望的年份。
The 15 years of history is quite worth of our reflection, review, and mapping out the vision for the future.
特别是在世界面临100年未有大变局和我们人类社会遭遇100年大流易这个背景之下，在人类发展面临走到十字路口的这种情况下，在世界经济复苏前景还不太明朗的背景之下，我们金砖国家在15年之际来讨论下一步的发展方向非常重要。
In particular, In the context of profound changes unseen in a century and this great pandemic, when the world is at the crossroad of where to go next, and the world economy is still unclear about how to recover, I believe that in such a context, it's highly relevant and valuable for us to discuss what's the next, what we should do next for the future of BRICS.
之所以值得总结经验啊，是因为金砖国家是新兴市场国家和发展国家、特别是发展大国合作的平台。过去15年来，为金砖国家自身合作，包括为世界经济发展啊，为完善全球治理，包括为推动世界和平与发展啊，都做出了积极贡献。我觉得这些成绩啊，也值得做系统的总结。
The reason I said that it's worth our efforts for a good review of our past experience is that the BRICS over the past 15 years has been a platform for cooperation among developing countries, especially major developing countries. And BRICS have done very well in not only its own, not only intra-BRICS cooperation, but also in its contribution to global economic development and world peace.
但是着眼未来啊，面对不稳定、不确定性因素更加增多的世界，金砖国家合作如何进一步优化我们现有的合作机制，使合作更有效率，更能代表我们金砖国家自身，包括发展中国家的整体声音，我觉得这方面啊，值得做进一步的研究。
Meanwhile, as the world faces great uncertainty and instability, I believe it will be very conducive for us if we can further optimize the mechanism inside BRICS and increase its representativeness of BRICS and developing countries.
我们既要回顾金砖自身发展的历程和经验，而且我们其实也可以看看其他国际机制合作的现状，有没有哪些有效的机制值得我们学习的？譬如说20国集团领导的峰会啊，这个 APEC 啊，上合组织等等其他国际组织，有没有一些好的经验做法，值得金砖国家机制来引进
？In addition to drawing ideas or learning lessons by reviewing the history of BRICS, we can also look at the cooperation within other international institutions like G20, APEC, and the Shanghai Forum to draw useful reference for our own improvement.
应该说，金砖国家已经建立了全方位、多层次的合作架构。下一步我觉得着力点还主要是怎么能够把领导人啊，把每次领导人峰会啊，各国元首达成共识，能够更有效的落地、生根啊，我想这是最主要的目的。
Now we can say that the BRICS have already formed a comprehensive and multi-level framework. What matters most next is thinking about how to implement the outcomes of the Leaders Summit of BRICS.
譬如说，我们制定了金砖国家经济伙伴关系这个战略啊，2025这些战略其实非常好，但怎么能够把这些战略的原则精神转化为一个个具体的合作项目和平台这就需要我们其他的各种机制去加以辅助和落实。
For example, the summit has endorsed the BRICS Economic Strategic Partnership 2025. This is indeed a very good strategy, but the key lies in whether we can transform the spirit of the strategy into tangible projects and platforms. And to achieve this, we need use different mechanisms to make them land and become real.
除了推动金砖国家自身来协同发展之外， 金砖国家合作机制如何成为南北合作、南南合作的桥梁我觉得也是我们这个机制下回应该考虑的一个方向。
In addition to improving the internal coordination among BRICS countries, we should also think about how to play BRICS' role as a bridge of facilitating and improving South-North cooperation and South-South cooperation.
这是我对金砖国家合作机制15年来下一步如何更加有效的发展我提的一些看法和评论。
So these are my ideas about how to further improve the BRICS mechanism based on my review of its development over the past 15 years.
关于今年的印度的峰会如何在哪些领域可以加强合作我看了你们3个方向在世界政治、经济和人文交流方面，其实有很多合作点。
As regards the areas or fields to be discussed at the Indian Summit this year, on the 3 aspects you have mentioned, such as the world politics, world economy, and people-to-people exchanges, I think there are a lot of areas where we can cooperate.
譬如在世界政治领域我觉得当务之急就是我们要巩固来之不易的多边主义的发展的势头，来继续推动完善强有治理。
For example, in the sphere of world politics, we should spare no effort in consolidating the hard-earned momentum of the development of multilateralism.
刚才我们有印度朋友谈到新多边主义我很赞同这样的提法。
Just now, our Indian friend mentioned new multilateralism, which I highly appreciate and agree with.
由于众所周知的原因前几年多边主义在全球范围内遇到很大挫折。
Due to the causes known by all, multilateralism suffered from a major setback over the past few years.
所以国际关系学者认为由于疫情的推动以及目前一些大国也看到必须回归多边主义也在倡导这个重回多边这个舞台所以我们应该抓住这种有利机制有利的这种态势来巩固目前多边主义往好的方面发展这么一个态势吧
As a result, some experts believe that this pandemic has inspired many major countries to advocate for the return to multilateralism. So we should seize this great trend and consolidate it so that there will be a real return of multilateralism.
所以金砖国家我个人认为还是要倡导维护以联合国为核心的国际体系和以国际法为基础的国际秩序，同时也要维护以 WTO 为核心的多边贸易体制。
So I believe that BRICS should resolutely safeguard the international order with UN at its core and the World Trade system with the WTO at its core.
国际法
as the basis.
同时也倡导在 WTO、WHO、IMF、World Bank 等等领域要提升发展国家的代表权和发言权。
In addition, we should also work to increase the representativeness and voice of developing countries in international organizations like WTO, WHO, IMF, and the World Bank.
在多边领域也有很多合作的新的领域，譬如说，刚刚有同谈到的我们要推动2030年可持续发展议程能够进一步的 取得更大成效。因为受新冠疫情冲击啊，2030年可持续发展议程这个比预期的要迟缓了一些。我们现在应该加快速度。
In terms of multilateral cooperation, we have many new fields. For example, some experts have mentioned just now that due to the impact of COVID-19, the progress to achieve the 2030 SDG will be affected. So we should speed up efforts to further accelerate this process.
在生物多样性方面，在气候变化方面我们也应该提出我们的主张。
We should also have our own proposals in the area of biodiversity and climate change.
特别是在疫情仍没有消失的背景之下，在国际的疫苗的这个生产、分配等方面，我们也要提出我们金砖国家的主张。
In particular, as the pandemic has not come to an end, we should have our Brics proposals on the production and the distribution of vaccines.
目前呢，全球注射疫苗的人数才只有不到4亿人应该讲，疫苗要做到人人可及这个人人能用得起还很长的路要走。
So far, only less than 400 million people around the world have been injected with COVID-19 vaccines. So we still have a long way to go to achieve true accessibility and affordability of COVID-19 vaccines to all.
如果广大发展国家在疫苗的获得方面处于劣势的话，这对于发展国家经济的复苏增长，那会带来负面影响。
If developing countries are in a weak position in terms of vaccine injection, then they will be put in an inferior position in terms of economic recovery.
所以我觉得在疫苗合作方面金砖国家应有自己的主张包括用于援助这一部发达国家给他们提供一些用得起的疫苗这方面我们也应该有共同的行动。
So in terms of cooperation on the vaccines, Brics countries should have their own proposals and plans, including how to provide aid of vaccines to other developing countries.
我关于第二个主题你们在谈的经济发展方面，我觉得金砖国家可以合作的领域就更加多了。
And on the second theme, which is economic development, I think the areas where we can cooperate are much more.
从宏观来讲，金砖5国之间应该加强宏观经济政策的协调。
At the macro level, the 5 Brics countries should strengthen their macro coordination.
特别是要倡导在国际层面全球层面加强宏观经济政策协调。
In particular, we should advocate the enhancement of macro level we should advocate the enhancement of macro coordination at the international level.
现在很多国家特别是些大国推出了数额巨大的经济刺激计划包括一些财政金融政策这些政策的外溢影响有哪些我觉得我们几个金砖国家也应该分析应对。
Currently, some big countries have issued huge economic stimulus packages or physical and financial plans. And in terms of what spillover effects those plans and policies might have, I think Brics countries should have a good analysis and find corresponding solutions to them.
在具体的领域刚才各位谈到的我都很赞同譬如在数字贸易在这个工业领域加强合作 包括在新能源领域的合作技术新领域的合作，我觉得这些都是合作的重点方向。
In terms of specific fields, just now the experts have mentioned digital economy, the industries, new energy, innovation, and technology. I think all these areas are very good fields for our cooperation.
我只有一个倡议
I have only one proposal.
着眼于金砖国家自身的每个国家自己的健康发展，以及金砖国家的系统发展。我支持的金砖国家应该着力于培养中产阶层这个队伍。
With an eye in fostering the self and coordinate the development within the BRICS, I think all BRICS countries should attach importance to the fostering of the development of middle class.
只有中产队伍足够大我们的社会发展才会更加良性。
Only after we have a middle class that is big enough will our society develop in a better way.
那么怎么能够扩大中产队伍呢？那就是工业制造业领域的发展应该是我们的共同的发展方向和合作的一个增长点。
Then how to expand the middle class? I think that industry and the manufacturing industry should be the area of our cooperation, which is also a good economic growth point.
所以我建议金砖国家之间在产业系统方面应该加大力度打造我们金砖国家能够在世界经济领域能够处于领先地位的一些产业链的集群。
So I believe that we, as BRICS countries, should enhance our efforts in boosting industrial coordination so that we can form some clusters in some key economic and industry fields. These are the world.
刚讲的，我想现在包括一些数字经济领域、工业互联网领域其实这些都是有个很好的发展前景。
Just now, as I mentioned, in the digital economy and the industrial internet, in those fields, there are very good areas with potential.
如果我们在第四次工业革命的一些前沿领域能够取得突破的话那我想对于我们金砖国家的发展，包括对全球经济的推动，会起到巨大的激励作用。
If we can achieve a breakthrough in some frontier industries, I believe this will not only be good for the development of BRICS itself, but also it will be a great driver for the world economy.
这里就谈到了金砖国家新开发银行的扩员问题和投资方向问题。
And now, with that in mind, we have to touch upon the source of capital and it's the source of capital of the new development bank of BRICS.
我们在金砖国家新开发银行应该吸收新的成员加入，同时在投资方向方面，不仅仅在基础设施方面要投入。在新的经济领域包括我讲的工业互联网这些领域电子商务领域、绿色基础设施方面我觉得都可以加大投资。
So I believe that the new development bank should not only admit new members but also expand its investment fields. In addition to its already existing areas, we should also expand its investment into new areas like e-commerce and green energy.
最后就谈到人文交流领域了因为受疫情的影响这几年人文交流也只能通过线上来 来交流啊。我觉得很快啊，如果疫情过后啊，我们要早些谋划线下的交流。
Now come to the third theme, which is the people-to-people exchanges. Due to the impact of COVID-19, the exchanges is limited only to online. But I think we should start to map out the plans of offline exchanges of people.
坦率来讲啊，我觉得金砖国家合作这些年来啊，在各方面都取得了很多成就，但是人文交流的这个人员互动的这个面啊，无论是数量还是质量还有待进一步提升。
To be frank, although Brics have made great progress in lots of fields, when it comes to people-to-people exchanges, both the quality and quantity of people-to-people exchanges have more room to improve.
人和人交流啊，需要一起吃饭喝酒你来我往我们期待疫情早日过去，能到印度我们面对面的进行交流。
People exchanges demands face-to-face exchanges. I sincerely hope that the pandemic will end soon, and we will have the chance to meet each other and even have meals and have drinks together in India.
所以再次感谢这个俄罗斯去年出色的组织，我们相信今年印度的峰会也会更加精彩。谢谢大家。
So I really appreciate the excellent organization efforts of Russia over the past year, and I have full confidence that India will also make it a great success as the new chairman. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Jinsin. A really plethora of new ideas, suggestions, really valuable. I think it is important, and our every speaker have also highlighted the importance of, and this is the first priority of the Indian chairship, of their strengthening multilateralism. And indeed, Brics should serve as a role model in this regard. But while I would not be attending to all of your suggestions, all of your ideas, I would probably look into the last one on the people-to-people exchanges. While I definitely agree with you that it is a real loss that we couldn't have face-to-face meetings in full capacity last year, and it is indeed a lot is being decided, a lot of new things are being born on the sidelines of the official events of the but nevertheless I would tell you that we with the help of the digital technologies, with the help of our own innovative ideas and enthusiasm of those who were behind the organization of those events, we managed, just one example, to organize their truly full-scale internship on the platform of the Far Eastern Federal University, when we had over 100 international students attending both offline and online on the 5 different educational programs, and it got really good responses and good evaluations from the kids and from the universities that's been sending those students to their internship. So this is one good example, and I think we could be scaling it up and using it for enhancing academic mobility of the 5 countries, and look into the opportunities to develop academic mobility and other types of mobility between our people using both offline and online. I think this could, in fact, have the multiplication effect and have a wider range of people involved in Brics activities, and it is very important. Another instance I would like to remind is that we quite successfully held the both academic forum and civil forum last year. Of course, we really missed our Brazilian, Indian, Chinese, and South African friends being present with us and having a good drink and good sun at the end of it. But at the same time, I think we managed to still elaborate new partnerships. We managed to make sure that it is not stopped, that it is not interrupted, and that we will be coming, this year would not be lost when we hopefully come first to Raisina and then to academic forum held in India. So I think this have to be kept in mind when we talk about P2P exchanges. But thank you once again. I think all of those were well taken, not just by our expert community, but by our official track. So maybe this is something to have for discussion for us further on. We're almost running out of time, but we have two more speakers. And now allow me to invite Dr. Manli Jun, who is the Deputy Director of the Center for People-to-People Exchange Studies of the Institute of Brics Studies of Sichuan International Studies University. Dr. Lejeune, the floor is yours. Please unmute. Your mic is off.
Thank you, Victoria. Hello, everyone. I am Monijin from Sichuan International Studies University. And my university is somewhat specialized in people-to-people exchange of the BRICS countries. So just now, as Dr. Jin has mentioned, people-to-people exchange is somewhat, there's kind of a loss, and there's still great room for us to explore compared to economic cooperation and political cooperation. So this is one aspect, and on the other side, or on the other hand, we still witnessed great development among the BRIC countries in terms of people-to-people exchange. We have actually achieved a lot in the past years. For example, firstly, we have achieved great consensus on the importance of people-to-people exchange. We had made people-to-people exchange as one of the three pillars of BRICS cooperation, and we had a series of documents signed and a lot of meetings held. And at the same time, we had diversified participants and think tanks, local government participation, and NGOs and universities. And we have a lot of fields in terms of education, culture, sports. We had the declarations on education, like the Brasilia, Moscow, New Delhi, Beijing Declaration on Education. We have also some cultural agreements in terms of the library networking, the museum networking, gallery networking, and we have collective activities to make films, make documentaries, and this kind of cooperation in the fashion sector. And we helped the BRICS sports meeting. So generally speaking, we achieved a lot, but indeed we need to admit there's still great room for us to do, a lot of things for us to do. And if we review what we have achieved in the past, we would find one feature, and that is those activities or those achievements are at most of the times driven by governmental promotion. That is, the government on the government level, both the central government and the local government, they have done a lot to promote people-to-people exchange. They held a lot of activities. And but if we look at the influence or the effects of these activities, we find out this kind of shortcomings, or we didn't achieve they maybe sometimes didn't achieve a great participation among the citizens. The frequency of interaction, the penetration of the impact into the common people, and of course, others like the coverage of these activities are somewhat limited. So this is a fact that we should sincerely consider and deal with. So I think, according to the new situation and the new realities, we had the pandemic and we have the development of science and technologies, especially the digitalization and the information technology. So at this time, we should reconsider our people-to-people exchange agenda and our plans and our some activities. We think we need a new stage of people-to-people exchange. At this stage, we can call it the people-to-people exchange version 2. This stage or this version maybe involve more common people's participation, or we call civil participation. So at this stage, governmental promotion and civil participation should be closely united and connected so that we would have a more extensive involvement of the common people, the citizens. With the involvement of the common people in people-to-people exchange or interaction, we would have a much more solid foundation for the friendship and understanding among the 5 BRIC countries. So we need a new stage, but how to achieve this new stage? I think the help of digitalization, as just mentioned by Ivan, by Vish, Pent, and Dr. Jin, digitalization and new technologies, especially information technology, can help us to put the people-to-people exchange into a new period and a new stage, because they have expanded the space and provided new ways for people to interact with each other, to get information from other countries and other people. So, and it can solve the difficulty of limited chance and limited channels for common people, the normal citizens, to get involved with people-to-people exchange activities. So actually it can provide more channels, and we can have some examples or some measures. For example, we think it is important for the young people to communicate with each other from different countries. So we can hold some forums or some online forums, and the Sichuan International University is planning to hold a youth forum from the BRICS countries. We initially planned to have it to hold it a face-to-face meeting, but if the pandemic cannot be over soon, we plan to hold online. So actually, information technology has aided us or has expanded our passes to carry out people-to-people exchange. And we can also have other measures. For example, nowadays we have a lot of socializing platforms in all the countries of BRICS. We have maybe different socializing platforms. And on these socializing platforms, people from different countries can see what is happening on the other side of the world, what is the peers in other BRICS countries are doing and enjoy their life. So these socializing platforms can provide a very good direct exchange experience for people from different countries. So we should make good use of these platforms. And also we can provide some online language courses for convenient learning. Nowadays, if we are to learn a foreign language, okay. So, and then maybe we can have a virtual traveling nowadays we have a virtual reality technology, and we have the museums, galleries, library networkings. So, and maybe in the future we would have some natural scenic sports networkings. So maybe we can hold some like the virtual traveling. We put all the resources, the pictures and the videos online, and they can be accessed by people from different countries. So with this channel, they can have a better understanding about other country, what another countries are like, what people in another countries are like, and the history, the culture, the architecture, the building, and the lives. So I think we can make use of this VR technologies to help people to understand each other. And we can also hold some online activities like concerts where musicians, artists from different countries, they come together to hold online concerts. Audience from all the 5 countries can watch them, and online exhibitions, online contests like this. So this can provide more chances for common people to get involved with each other, not only knowing, sometimes interacting, and make them know that other people are just like us, and to help them get rid of a sense of otherness. So I think with the help of science and technology, especially the information technology, we can actually put people-to-people exchange to a higher level, to a new stage. Okay, that's my remarks and my ideas for this. Thank you all.
Thank you so much, Dr. Lejeune. I believe this is something we should be considering and have to be exploring such opportunities in order to ensure a continuity of our exchanges and that nothing can interrupt a possibility to communicate between our 5 countries. We're drastically running out of time, but our last but not least by far speaker would be telling us, Professor Keith Gottschalk from the University of the Western Cape would be telling us of the topic that is still been raised, but is very important for the future of Brics cooperation. This is outer space cooperation. Dr. Gottschalk, please, the floor is yours. Looking forward to your intervention.
Dear colleagues, thank you for enriching our thoughts with all your contributions. I'm looking at Brics cooperation in space exploration and the possibilities. At one end of the spectrum, Russia and China have human spaceflight programs and will be joined in 2 or 3 years by India. At the other end of the spectrum, Brazil and South Africa do not have even a satellite launch vehicle and no budgets to build them. But there are certainly many areas for cooperation amongst Brics in space exploration. The first aspect I will raise is a square kilometer array. India, China, and South Africa are all partners in constructing the SKA, which is now the world's largest radio telescope, and would welcome Russian and Brazilian astronomers joining in. It has already 64 dishes and another 120 are to be built. We should note that in addition to astronomical research, the square kilometer array could also perform emergency communication functions in cosmonautics. The latest exciting news is that Russia and China have just signed an agreement to build either a joint moon base or a space station orbiting the moon. Should a cosmonaut on the moon be out of line of sight with the moon base and the normal relay is not working, the SKA can easily pick up a cosmonaut's radio communications and relay it to the relevant base. The second dimension of possible cooperation among Brics, our age, is the South African contribution that can be made through the South African National Space Agency and Denel facilities. The Sensor Space Operations Center at Hartebeeshoek has over 20 antennae and ground stations and has provided support for over 300 spacecraft in low Earth orbit or geosynchronous orbit since it started operations. It is very helpful for our Northern Hemisphere partners, India, China, and Russia, as the visible area for Hartebeeshoek's radio communications ranges from 3 degrees to 50 degrees south and is in a part of the hemisphere very useful when often spacecraft are in transfer orbits to lunar orbit or elsewhere. It has full telemetry, tracking and command for launch facilities and stretches across all the 5 remote sensing bands. Because time is pressing, I will just conclude that point by mentioning that South Africa also has the Overberg test range with embedded in it the South African Air Force Test Flight and Development Center, which includes a 3-kilometer runway. So if BRICS countries are developing, for example, a launch vehicle which is vertical takeoff and horizontal landing, it can easily be accommodated at the Overberg test range in South Africa. Time means that the last point I want to raise will be in the spirit of multilateralism, not a South African project, but an Indian project of incredible potential. Decades ago, India's Defense Research and Development Laboratory team designed a space plane that was a reusable launch vehicle, a horizontal takeoff and landing, and a single stage to orbit concept, well ahead of anything Elon Musk SpaceX is currently attempting. Its technology strategy to achieve this was by being air breathing for the first 30 kilometers altitude of flight and using FLOX in-flight liquid oxygen technique by refilling its liquid oxygen tanks only during flight, using the liquid hydrogen fuel to liquefy oxygen out of the atmosphere. But because the project was not suitable for weaponization, the DRDL did not take the project to the stage of fabrication. It did, however, declassify all the research documents, all the design and blueprints as a gift to humankind. And while it's not suitable for weaponization, the spaceplane project is ideal for civilian spaceflight. India, Russia, and China have all major fabrication capabilities in aerospace and cosmonautics. Brazil has its famous Embraer aerospace company with much fabrication, assembly lines, and capability. And the South African aerospace industry has got many capabilities from components and subsystems and is part of international value chains to Airbus and elsewhere. So I would like to urge all BRICS partners to take up with their relevant authorities that we are in fact overdue in BRICS in not reviving this Indian project and making it into a BRICS project over there. As soon as BRICS budgets recover from the COVID slump and we avoid the not invented here syndrome, we can add a great new dimension of space cooperation to the BRICS cooperation. Thank you for your kind attention and congratulations to the Far Eastern Federal University for bringing us all together.
Thank you so much, Professor Gottschalk. It was indeed very interesting and extremely important area, and lots of ideas, very specific, very concrete, that we could be not only discussing further, but maybe even taking action. That would be really good to look into those opportunities. Thanks once again. We had a series of very interesting, very serious deliberations, discussions, and I'm quite sure Mr. Malkov would be willing to give like a closing remarks in response to all our speakers, like a view from the official track to our expert deliberations. Mr. Malkov.
Thank you, Dr. Panova. I consider it not as a closing remarks, but as a right to reply, you know. From the official track, because I'm very glad to hear such ideas from our experts, and I'm very glad to constatate that the government's efforts, the efforts of the governmental officials from BRICS countries are going in exactly the same way that our experts advocate for. Let me just point out some themes or issues that I noted. First, Dr. Oliveira highlighted the issue of energy cooperation within BRICS, and I should proudly say that this sphere is developing dynamically within the grouping. You know that we have launched the platform for energy research cooperation platform, which serves as a very good common ground for researchers in the field of energy. By the way, there are outlook mentioned by Dr. Panova is one of the products of the joint cooperation within the energy research cooperation platform. And definitely we're looking forward to strengthening the ties between energy experts, between energy officials, and that's why actually the Russian side proposed to hold the first meeting of senior officials in the field of energy on the margins of the relevant meeting of the G20 in order to coordinate our positions before such event. And then we have launched this format of senior officials in the field of energy, and it continues to serve as a very valuable and very productive format of our cooperation. Definitely we should do more in this sphere, and I'm sure that this is the case. At least I can speak for our Ministry of Energy that is very proactive in terms of developing energy cooperation between the BRICS partners. And you also mentioned a very interesting possible area for our cooperation, which is STI cooperation. And actually, you know that it is also, I should constatate that great work has been done by BRICS relevant authorities to deepen the cooperation between our countries in the field of innovation, for example, or science. Actually, in 2019, during the chairship of Brazil, the steering committee, STI steering committee, was established in order to coordinate the BRICS cooperation in this field. And I think it was a great initiative because now we can list, so to say, all the working groups, all the formats of our cooperation in the field of STI. By the way, just to mention that we have about 13 working groups dealing with different aspects of STI cooperation. For example, ocean researchers, photonics, and so on and so forth. So, and by the way, we also have established the network university, Brics Network University, and we're looking forward to signing during the Indian chairship, signing the roadmap of the Brics Network University for the next period, for period 2021-2025. So we think it could be a great deliverable. Ambassador Vishwantan highlighted the issue of necessity to discuss within Brics the reform of the multilateral system. We are fully committed and subscribe ourselves to discussing this issue within Brics, but at the same time I should say that we mostly should speak not only about reform itself, but also about the strengthening of multilateral institutions that our countries created as well. Because, for example, the UN was created by not only by, I don't know, the permanent members of the United Nations, but South Africa, for example, is also, or Brazil are also among the founding members of the UN. So it's not about only reform, it's all about strengthening multilateralism in our current world. And it was very rightly noticed that unfortunately some COVID-19 limitations displayed the lack of multilateralism in the current world, especially when it comes to the trade, some protectionist practices and so on and so forth. Definitely Brics has something to say on the matter. It should say something. Last year we managed to adopt the joint statement of the Ministers of Trade and Economy, Brics Ministers of Trade and Economy, on reform of the multilateral trade system. It was a great endeavor, and we are glad to have this document as a common position of Brics countries on such very important issue. You also mentioned the issue of digitalization. Definitely it's one of priorities in Brics. Actually, a strategy for Brics Economic Partnership 2025 prioritized this issue as well. And it's all about not only digitalization of health, for example, because as far as I know, this issue will be one of the priority areas for the Indian chairship, and we fully support it. But it's all about the development of e-commerce in Brics countries, and actually we also tried to study this issue while chairing the Brics, and our economy of our Ministry of Economy also proposed to our partners some initiatives on the track, and we hope that this initiative will gain an additional impetus during the Indian chairship. Dr. Himani Pant also mentioned the healthcare as a prospective area for our cooperation, and I fully agree with you, Doctor, in this, and actually that's why we also prioritized this area during the Russian chairship and Brics in 2020. And I have already mentioned that we propose to our partners to consider our initiative to establish the integrated early warning system to prevent infectious diseases risks in Brics countries. So we are looking at strengthening our cooperation in the field of vaccines as well. Actually, it's not a new one because all the necessary instructions we got even in 2015, in 2015, in the UFA declaration. You can easily go through the document and find that our leaders called for closer cooperation between the relevant authorities on preventing new infectious diseases and communicable diseases as well. I also would welcome the statement by Dr. Jin Qin from China. It was very substantive. Just several remarks, if I may. It was rightly pointed out that now we should think about the future of Brics and the role of Brics in the future. And definitely it is the work for our experts as well to crystallize or to find some areas where Brics could be a kind of unique or very efficient in terms of promoting common agenda and actually informing international agenda in some issues, for example, sustainable development, why not? And you also mentioned the need to speed up our efforts to achieve Agenda 2030. Actually, this issue is covered in the strategy for Brics economic cooperation partnership that we adopted in 2020, and actually one of the maybe the main goal of the Russian chairship in 2020 was to bring more benefit from Brics cooperation for our people, for well-being of our people. This is exactly echoes this exactly echoes the sentiments expressed by Dr. Jinshin in terms of fostering cooperation on developing of middle class in our countries, strong middle class in our countries, as an engine of Brics economies. And definitely I can fully subscribe myself on the issue to develop our cooperation in the field of industry. By the way, I should welcome the initiative that were announced during the South African chairship in 2018, and after that actually the lead nation to promote this project was China. It is a partnership for a new industrial revolution. It's a very valuable tool for our countries to actually maybe to be among the leaders in a new technological economy. and definitely this is the issue to be discovered, to be researched by our experts as well, where exactly we can cooperate, which spheres are more or less on the forefront of our cooperation. And just once again about the Agenda 2030, I will allow myself to quote the strategy for BRICS economic partnership. So members, I quote, members of the grouping will cooperate on achieving the SDGs and aligning the BRICS agenda with the 2030 agenda. This is exactly the same what Dr. Jinshin talked about. So Dr. Men Lijun outlined a very important issue for BRICS, which is further strengthening of people-to-people exchanges. And you know that this pillar is one of the this cooperation is one of the pillars of the BRICS dialogue. And when we talk, when we say that what has been done is not enough, definitely we are right. But at the same time, I just want to say that the Moscow Declaration give us about 33 people-to-people events conducted during the Russian chairship before the summit, of course. So it's not a small number, I should say. And a lot of spheres have been covered. And by the way, not all of the people-to-people events became the part of the declaration, because it's impossible to include all of them. It's a variety of events, including some cultural events, and I should just say, you also mentioned the necessity to develop the youth cooperation within BRICS. And in December we had the Youth Summit, where the agreement was reached, the agreement to work on establishing a council, volunteers council, BRICS Volunteers Council, because we proceed from the understanding that volunteers movement is one of the bright examples of activism, people's activism. And definitely it deserves to get more attention within BRICS. So we hope that this project, this initiative will gain due support of our BRICS partners. And I would highly appreciate the statement by and the proposals by Prof. Kate Gottskalk, if I correctly pronounce your name in a Cape Townian manner. So I share your sentiment that the space issues should be on the top priority, on the top of the BRICS priorities. And actually this is exactly the same what I talked about in my opening remarks. So for now we have some projects, and one of the flagship project is the draft agreement on satellite constellation for remote sensing. We cherish the hope that we can finalize this work, and it will be an impetus for further development of the space cooperation. Actually, the Roscosmos proposed during the meeting of senior officials on space, from the space agencies, to discover the issue of cooperation between universities and experts in space issues between our countries. And I just want to mention one more initiative by the Russian Federation that we are promoting, have been promoting for some time. It's an idea to establish a dialogue on security in outer space. This dialogue could help us to guarantee that the outer space, which is actually a heritage for all humanity, not only by space countries, so-called space countries. So to make this outer space, to ensure that the outer space is peaceful and open for scientific research, and but not for weaponization, because the weaponization of the outer space could lead our civilization to collapse, actually. So once again, my thanks go to experts of the BTTC and all the participants of today's seminar, and we, I mean officials, and here I represent the Russian Minister of Foreign Affairs, so definitely I can speak only on behalf of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of the Russian Federation in this regard, but I'm sure that my colleagues in BRICS countries also would support this, that we highly appreciate the work of the expert community from our countries, because it helps us to be in tonus, if you want, so to consistently promote the developing of BRICS cooperation. And what is the most important, we feel the feedback from our civil society, from our expert community, from business in BRICS countries who are interested in developing ties between the big five, as we call it. By the way, I should say that this term, the Big Five, we took it from the South African chairship in BRICS in 2018. You know that the Big Five means the five animals famous in Africa, but we believe that BRICS almost also can serve as Big Five animals in the international nature to foster a predictable and more democratic atmosphere of the international relations. And that is exactly what BRICS was created for. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Malkov. I think I have, well, sorry, Mr. Malkov, but you spoke as if you were a doctor. So, in fact, I have not much to add, because you've been so comprehensive, so extensive, that I think you covered all the major topics, and you demonstrated perfect response. And one thing I just want to express my happiness that, first of all, at least we can have guarantees, at least from the Russian Foreign Ministry, that all our deliberations and our ideas and our thoughts and strivings were heard by you, and that you found, it's good to hear that you found them interesting and doable and useful for furthering BRICS cooperation, and in fact, not just BRICS, but global development agenda, global agenda as a whole. And this also proves that we could be serving in synergy global fashion setters and agenda setters, and role models for the world, and in fact, reach the situation when we can, and this is the goal of all the BRICS countries, reach fairer, more inclusive world that all of us would like to live in. And I hope this was just one of the steps and in the series of events that each of us are holding. And I would like to wish once again all the best luck to our Indian friends for this year. We will be doing all possible in order to make it successful. So you can count on us, and we're with you. And I'm sure that BRICS will be not only continuing its path, but also showing new heights and showing new examples to the world. Once again, thank you everybody, all the speakers. It was great to see you, and hoping to be seeing you and listening to you offline very soon. Thank you.